for a lot of our labs, we are going to be using what's called a data frame. A data frame is essentially a table with rows and columns where we will be able to store different columns of different data types with large amounts of data for manipulation and sorting and filtering and being able to loop through. We will be using pandas, and we'll look in our first lab how to install that and build your first data frame. And from there, we will continue to explore how we can manipulate data in our data frame once it's stored in our Jupyter notebook. To get started learning data frames, let's go ahead and create a new notebook in Jupyter to store some of our code. So from Jupyter, from our training folder, let's create a new Python 3 workbook. And let's click on this column here, and let's give this a name we will remember. And before we can use data frames or pandas, which is going to be the library for data frames, we need to install the extra tools. And if you remember early in the labs, we installed pip installer. So we can now install a series of libraries with the commands pip install and then the name of the packages you want to install. So for here, we're going to install pandas. This is going to be isolated to this notebook, so anytime you create a new one, you will need to run this again. But if you are to install pandas on your local computer via Python, you won't need to do this for every single script you have. So you can click on here and click on Run, and the star will indicate this is running, and it will take a few seconds. And you'll notice that I already had pandas on my machine, so it's just some notifications on all of this is already installed. If it's your first time, you will get it successfully installed. So to start using data frames, you need to now import this into your code. And import is as easy as just writing the word import pandas as PD. And now we're going to create a data frame, and we're going to call it df. df is the common nomenclature, but you could call it anything you want, as Python is extremely extendable. But to keep things light and easy, we're going to use df for most of our data frames going forward. And we're going to say pd data frame paren, and let's print that data frame. We've put nothing in it, so when you run this, we need to put parens around our data frame. And when this runs, you'll realize that we come back with an empty data frame, because all we've done is create a data frame and we've printed it, and we have not put any data in it. So let's go ahead and rewrite this a little bit with some data so it's a little bit easier to see. So let's go ahead and copy some of this code up here from above. And instead of an empty data frame, we are going to put some value. We're going to create a data list. In this list, we're going to put some values, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to seed our data frame with that data. And then we're going to print that data frame. And you see that this comes back with the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see the index number that is auto-generated and placed into our data frame. It's a little hard to see, so let's go ahead and put in some text values instead. So now when you run it, you can see the values that were put into the actual data frame, and the data frame begins to append some indexes here for your rows and columns to make this easily manipulatable later on when you're working with more advanced data frame items. So we just have a single column multi-row here. So what happens, we said these are tables. So we're going to want to work with more rows and more columns. So an easy way to do that is we could show, because we could continue to nest sub-elements with parens. So if we were to do test, comma, the number 10, and use a structure similar to this, and seed that into our data frame, you realize that we begin to add more rows, more columns to our data frames. We could continue to do this for a number of rows and columns going to the right and down, and data frames are extremely extendable to store vast amounts of information. There's a lot more you could do with data frames when it comes to adding rows, deleting rows, searching rows, but as this class requires some basic understanding of Python and data frames, data structures, we'll go ahead and cover those more as we go through some of the automation examples in the future labs.